and get to the only person in the Farm Bureau building that was required to come to work today. That's pretty bad. And that's the president of the Mississippi Farm Bureau. Did you find a pretty good parking place other than normal?
Well, it looks like the parking lot's pretty empty this morning, Paul. But, maybe we can get some water back here to the building and get everybody back.
Can't even flush the toilet. I mean, that's just ridiculous. And I don't think it's going to be any better. I forgot, I think the Capitol has its own water supply?
No, I don't think so. I think Andy Gibson has his own water supply.
Maybe it's Andy at the fair, but as the guys and gals come back in next week, that might still be an issue because they've got a lot of busted pipes out there that they're trying to track down. But it is not good if people, and I'm sure people have heard this, if you're headed to the Jackson area for one reason or the other, boil water notices. And that's happened in a lot of these small towns. Even on the coast, there were some places. Memphis, Tennessee has got some bad problems with that. But it does kind of point out the neglect we've done as far as the infrastructure of not only sewer, but water, too, underground.
Yeah, we've got to invest in our infrastructure for water. Yeah. I applaud the legislature for putting funds into helping the rural water associations. Mine and Union Church were able to secure a grant that is going to help us upgrade our water for our customers there in our little home county. So, but that's something that we need to continue to do. Once they put this money that's been allocated by Congress that we're hearing this coming, maybe $600 million.
Over that, yeah.
Yeah, they're going to have to continue to invest into the future. We'll be right back here where we were.
And when we take a look, and I haven't had you on in a while, so you look back and some of the key points that you might want to mention to the folks as far as Farm Bureau and public policy that is so important to you guys, and we'll talk about the upcoming legislative session, but just looking back and recapping 2022.
Well, we felt like after the constitutional amendment process was challenged and all of that is in a state of flux, that our constitutional amendment that Farm Bureau was involved with of getting some additional protections for your private property through protections from eminent domain, that we needed to put that into state law, that we needed to codify it, and we got that done last year. That was a huge win for everybody that has property across Mississippi.
Then looking forward to 2023, what's some of the main objectives, Mike? What's on the top of your list?
Well, what I've heard from the legislature is we're probably not going to look at a whole bunch of bills this year, and then I'll read in the paper where our Lieutenant Governor's got a pretty big agenda, so we'll be down there watching those. We've got probably a limited amount of things that we want to work on for this year, but more than likely what we do the best is reading bills for our members and making sure that there's no unintended consequences that are coming through on some of those that might negatively impact us in rural Mississippi.
You and I have been doing this for a long time. And what portends as, okay, we're not going to take up a lot of bills, it's going to be a lackadaisical and we're going to get through this, is about as accurate as the hurricane forecasters, isn't it?
Yes.
It really is
for the last 2 years, I've told the Speaker and the Lieutenant Governor we're not coming with a whole lot, and then our friends in the legislature drop bills that they want us to help them with or that needs a little bit of work on to make them a little bit better, and we get involved with a whole lot of things down there. So I promised that I wouldn't say that we're not going to have anything down there this year, because as sure as I do, we'll have a whole bunch.
What do you want people to know who maybe not are a member of the Farm Bureau across the state? The many things that you guys do.
Well, I think the best thing we do is very quietly and very professionally go about our way of protecting rural Mississippi's way of life, our private property rights, things that are important to farmers, but also things that are important to the future of rural Mississippi, like supporting funding for infrastructure, emergency road and bridge fund, which we've been a key advocate for. We talk about rural broadband that we served on so many different levels federally and on the state level to get access to rural broadband. I think that's the electrification of the 21st century. We've got to get our people connected so we can do our work from home and do our work more efficiently. So we do a lot of things out there. You don't see about us a lot on the news, but we've been working on it a long time. We just celebrated our 100th birthday here just a week or so ago, and one of my most favorite people I've met through Farm Bureau was an old lobbyist. His name was John Grace. He worked for us many decades ago. He was 96 when I met him, and he told me when he went to the Capitol to work for Farm Bureau, it was him, one person that worked for the electric power cooperatives, and one person that had an odd and end customer that was working at the Capitol as lobbyists. So we've been there a long time doing a whole lot of things, Paul.
Jeez. It's always great to talk to people like that, the wisdom and also the history they have first person. It's just the greatest regret I have as a young person is not sitting there and just say, sit down, talk to me, give me all of the information that you have and soak it up. I did at a young age, but not young enough. You know, in a lot of ways, Mike, and I'm thinking of a guy named James Raskins. He is that slimy Democrat from Montana, a member of the committee investigating the events of January 6th. And in a lot of ways, people don't understand, and the reason I'm tying these two things together is he is pushing, and my understanding is they're going to push like everything for this as far as the Electoral College to change that. But in many ways, what you just said, we are a rural state, and the power is in the rural areas, but you would never know that as far as if you let only Jackson and DeSoto County vote, and that it would be counted in that manner. And I'm trying to tie these things together. Here's what he basically said.
This is an incredible body of work, all coming to this conclusion now. What do you think Americans at home need to know?
With democracy under attack all over the world, like with Putin invading Ukraine and the Ukrainian people standing up for their democratic freedom and tyrants and autocrats on the march everywhere. It's good to know that we have a strong, resurgent democratic spirit in America.
The institutions held. At the conclusion of this, because you've spent almost 2 years investigating, what happens next for you? Are there pieces of this that in the new Congress, even under Republican control, need to be further investigated or somehow legislated around?
Well, when you say the institutions held, they did hold just barely. The truth is that we need to continually be renovating and improving our institutions.
How so? What do you mean?
Well, I think that the Electoral College now, which has given us 5 popular vote losers as president in our history, twice in this century alone, has become a danger, not just to democracy, but to the American people. It was a danger on January 6th. There's so many curving byways and nooks and crannies in the Electoral College that there are opportunities for a lot of strategic mischief. We should elect the president the way we elect governors, senators, mayors, representatives, everybody else. Whoever gets the most votes wins.
My thought was, what geniuses the Founding Fathers were, because they knew that there were going to be idiots like this come along.
If we lose the Electoral College, we'll lose our influence in national elections. They won't even probably count Mississippi. It'll be done before they get here. So we want our voices counted, and I don't know that Farm Bureau has a policy supporting Electoral College, but I think it's clearly in there to help support the rural parts of the nation.
You would have California and the New England states, basically, maybe a couple of others, but those would be the ones that would decide. And as patriotic as I am, if it's a real cold day, it would be useless for me to go to vote. And I hate to say that. But and he's calling that patriotic. How many members do you have as far as Farm Bureau?
We have over 180,000 member families in the state of Mississippi.
Wow.
Paul.
That's families.
Yes.
That's families. Have you been keeping up with the latest as far as the situation in the Delta with the farmers?
Yes, very, very closely.
Can you touch base on that when we come back?
Sure, I'd love to.
I hate to keep you for an extra segment here because I don't want you to lose your good parking place outside, but
I'll be glad to. Not a lot going on in my office today, Paul.
No, it's not. I mean, it'd be you and just a couple of slices of fruitcake left over. That's it. Mike McCormick, President, Mississippi Farm Bureau. We'll visit with Mike a little more when we come back in just a second. Final segment with Mike McCormick. Dutch government plans to buy or close down up to 3,000 farms near environmentally sensitive areas, and this is allegedly comply with EU environmental nitrogen rules. It's called the Great Reset, and they're forcing these people to sell their farms. I was doing some research, and this is probably a month and a half, 2 months old, but I thought I'd pull it out of the file here. Who owns most of U.S. farmland? Bill Gates is the number one owner, 269,000 acres. How many acres does China own in the United States? Chinese own 192,000 acres of farmland, and they're buying up more every single day. And one more, who is the largest? Canada is the biggest foreign owner of U.S. farmland, owning about 4.7 million acres in the United States. So there you go. The Netherlands is the second with 4.6 million acres. Is that happening in our state? Do we have a lot of people grabbing Mississippi farmland?
Yes, Bill Gates is in Mississippi buying farmland, but a lot of what's happening is investment funds and bigger investment entities are buying farmland as just good investments, and they're outbidding farmers for it and competing in the marketplace, so the farmers turn around and come back and lease that ground for them. I
got you. So that takes that puts money in their pockets, I guess.
Well, I think they think it's a safe investment. They're looking at it long term. So we do have that sort of thing going on in Mississippi, and we've got a lot of policy that we deal with on that. It's a very touchy issue. It's hard to legislate. There are already laws in the United States that would limit the foreign ownership of land, but you can come in, set up LLCs or corporations here and domicile them here in the United States and then get around those rules. So it's things that we look into for sure.
Something that worries me even more than that, believe it or not, is just what happens to the next generation, because there are a lot of these farmers' kids are not getting into the business. So what happens, especially in a state like Mississippi where agriculture is still so critically important?
Well, what's happening is the profit margins have gotten so slim in farming now that you have to do it at an economy of scale to be able to afford to stay in this business. We were just celebrated our 100th year anniversary. We had John Deere was a title sponsor to a trade show that we had, and they had their new See and Spray machine there that's going to revolutionize the way we protect our crops. But that machine's going to be $1 million or a little better. Combines upward of that, and cotton pickers may be over that now. So it takes a lot of land, a lot of acreage, a lot of inputs to be able to play the game that we play. And again, the risk just keeps getting stronger and stronger with the profit margins just getting less and less.
Think back to when we were growing up, a family of 5 in the Mississippi Delta on a 100-acre farm, and we never knew we were poor because we always had something to eat, something to wear, and things to do. And I don't think you could do that on a 100 unless it's marijuana. I don't think you could do it on a 100-acre farm anymore. The
only thing that I can see the future in Mississippi being able to do on small amount of acres like that, 100 acres, would be the expansion of the poultry industry here. You can build some poultry houses on about that amount of acres and make a good income, a good living there if you're willing to put the effort in for it.
And you don't need government sanctions because chickens are still just going to have 2 wings in the future. So there's going to be a demand there. So
that's one of the things that we work the hardest on, Paul, is to limit government overreach into what we do. The more they get involved with what we do, the harder it is for us to do business.
And I don't think it's changed that much. People don't realize this. But when you start talking about forestry and poultry, those are 2 of the things that are not spotlighted as much, that they're big in our state.
Number 1, poultry. Number 3, forestry. Soybeans has slipped up to number 2 because the fertilizer that has gotten so very expensive that soybeans don't take as much of it. So our row crop farmers are farming a lot of that. So 1, 2, and 3 is always going to be poultry and forestry in there.
You see any conclusion or any farmers that you know are not going to be able to continue because of the express grain situation? I think the last we talked to, Don Barrett, who's one of the attorneys on this for the victims, said most of them are going to continue. So have you heard anything otherwise?
I have not. I would tell you that I'm sure it's in the bank's best interest to keep those farmers farming because they don't want to own a bunch of farmland and tractors and things that they can't do business with. So they're gonna continue to give them crop loans until they just can't get that done anymore. We've been very fortunate to have some pretty decent crop years the last couple of years. So they were probably able to farm their way out of it last year. What we don't need is a tough year of a drought or too much rain to where they don't get a crop out. That would put them in some severe damage. But when you dig yourself a hole like that and you're trying to bail a little money in there a little bit at a time, it puts you at a lot of stress and a lot of disadvantage. It's just a crying shame that those farmers produced that crop and now they may never get a penny for it.
One of the things that is always good having the Commissioner of Agriculture on, and Andy's done a good job on this. Number one, to spotlight it and make it known that it's a situation, putting ag in the classrooms, and that's one of you guys' advocacy too, and he's talked to us a lot of times about expanding and creating where there is none, mentorships and internships as far as agriculture is concerned.
Yeah, we've got to continue to tell Ag's story. That's Farm Bureau started the Ag in the Classroom program or got involved with that here in the early 50s. And we just hired our first full-time teacher that will be working with schools around the state, telling their kids where their food comes from. Because quite frankly, a lot of them don't grow up on farms. You only get one generation removed from a farm, and they don't have a clue where their food comes from. So we'll continue to push that. But Andy has done a good job, and we continue to support his efforts and try to do everything that we can to help our farmers.
It's a new world out there, isn't it? I saw a drone actually not only landscaping and surveying a field, but I saw one larger drone actually putting some chemicals out. I'm not sure how long that's going to work, but, man, it is a new world out there as far as agriculture is concerned.
And with that, there'll be government regulations for that as well. I understand there's some drone language coming in bills down at the legislature. We're digging into those to see if we can support that or if it's something that we want to stay away from for this session. But always changing times. But the technology that we've got coming is going to keep our farmers on the cutting edge and keep us where we can feed the world. We don't want to get like the Netherlands and these places where they're outlawing farmers and saying it's a bad thing to feed your population, because we can't defend ourselves if we can't feed ourselves, Paul.
One of the worst mistakes I ever made, and you just flashed a memory, is that I was finally put in charge of planting a couple of acres of the cotton when the dad had to do something else, and it was required, so I had to finish it up. And it was only about 5 or 6 rows, but those were the crookedest roads. And how do you get away from that? Because it's like punishment over a long period of time. And lay-by even isn't lay-by then, because he can see those crooked rows the larger they get. That was a long year.
Well, my dad and his oldest brother were polar opposite. My dad was a perfectionist, and my dad's oldest brother, told me many times that anybody knew that you could grow more crops on a crooked road than you can a straight road.
That's what I tried to tell him.
Dad didn't think that was funny at all, and today we have GPS systems that will lay out a field and make it perfectly straight.
It is just absolutely. One other question here, and I just want to ask you this, because one of the advocacies, too, for the Farm Bureau has been a long time, is the environmental laws and everything else. Do we have some issues with that in our state, especially during this administration?
Well, we're eagerly waiting the ruling on the waters of the U.S. American Farm Bureau has been key to that, writing it, then rewriting it, then rewriting it again, and it seems like every administration that comes in, they want to do something different, go from one extreme to the other. So we're continuing to work with that to let them know that what they are saying that is a waters may not be a water. It probably will regulate 90-95% of the land in Mississippi, increasing bureaucracy and permits to be able to do the same things that you're being able to do. So the environmental issues with the oversight that EPA is doing now with our crop protection products, our chemicals, our pesticides and herbicides are very concerning to us, and we've been to Washington. We've had the Environmental Protection Agency here in the state and did some tours of some farms here where we think we made some big impacts with them. So just getting the information out to them of how this impacts rural America is what Farm Bureau does best.
Man. Good to know you guys are there. Mike, thank you for taking the time on this Tuesday. I appreciate it, sir, so very, very much. Stay in touch during the legislative session, and anything we need to know about, please let us know.
We'll be glad to, Paul. Just
Thank
right
you, man.
down the hall.
Appreciate it very much. You got it.